I just got out of the shower. I did a video earlier and I just couldn't post it. So I was sitting here and I was gestating, and it's either um, you know, be silent, say nothing, or open up. And so today I'm gonna share this from a kind of a diary of a sensitive kid, but for more of an awareness that as I align and I get into my energy pathways, there's these disruptions that block or limit availability for light or for healing to occur. And the more I try, the more sessions I buy and everything, they don't clear. And so now it's time to talk about them. And I want to talk about implanted timelines here on planet Earth that have had a really great effect on me and my journey, my story, and also my mental health. And a lot of this has to do with in which the story horcruxes or crucifies or takes us away from our soul, takes us away from our source, strips us of divinity. Um, and I speak to this not to create, my intention here is not to create more fear, but to bring to light these timelines, because there's one that keeps showing up right now, and I keep hearing you just need to talk about it. Okay, we'll talk about it. So it comes from the constellation of Sirius, and it's about Jesus. So Jesus in this celestial galactic aspect and alignment comes through the name Yezua, Jezua, like Yeshua, but Yezua. And Yezua is a part of a higher galactic team that brought the original grids and gatekeeping mission here to planet Earth. The thing that's tough about what's going on is that this in itself runs a simulation. Okay. So this implanted timeline runs a simulation and or what seems to be kind of like a holodeck because it's a part of an imprint or an Akashic memory that wants to get cleansed from ancient Egypt. And some of those original like Orion Wars and stuff is like when those stargates fell, so came through a lot of cataclysmic timelines that created destruction and corruption in our own journey that fueled a lot of things that affected us as star seeds and as indigos, or even just as souls here on planet Earth without having to put it into a framework, in which we chose to take on implanted timelines to cleanse them so we wouldn't repeat those mistakes or those experiences, right? This one's really interesting because it showed up last night and it always shows up with Archangel Michael. So the point here is that there's a prayer that I did through Summit Lighthouse, and I did this Archangel Michael prayer, and it talks about bringing in a cordon of angels with Archangel Michael, which would be his quote unquote group, right? His emissary group of protector forces that are part of the blue flame, right? Which is kind of like security here on planet Earth, right? And these security teams are here to basically like help the ascension process to occur. Now, the thing here is when they showed up, they're like, "We brought you a cordon bleu," and they made me laugh. I was like, "You guys are hilarious." And they said, "But Yeshua is here," and they were speaking of Yeshua as the higher cosmic galactic guardian aspect of Jesus from Sirius. I don't know if it's Sirius A, B, or C because it's showing up Blu-ray. Like I've had someone say it's Sirius A. I have picked it up as Sirius B because I've taken the Blu-ray to Sirius B, but once again, that's where the details aren't quite straight here. But in this timeline is the awareness of Project Bluebeam, right? And a Horcruxing timeline in which agendas created parallels and alternatives and things separated. So we have the New Earth timeline, right? Fifth dimensional ascension. And then we have the New World Order timeline. And the New World Order timeline is like those two can, through this Project Bluebeam, can kind of intersect and coalesce and converge, and it can get very messy. It's where obfuscation occurs, and what's happened for myself is that when I'm remembering where these implanted timelines are in my own journey, we start to run into time wars. And those time wars have been things in which affect our dream time, they affect our timeline and our choice to have freedom, free will, and sovereignty in our own timeline choice. And it can show where it really has a great effect on mental health and keeps us really dragged down into more of matrix aligned systems, right? And for myself, here's what will happen. I say, yes, I want to be an energy healer. Yeah, I'm here to rehabilitate some of these fallen Atlantean timelines. But a part of what that karmic lesson has been in not repeating the pattern from those falls, right? So for myself, this can be a very scientific version of Corey, which is very chemical bound, very much so The Alchemist, very much so built in, like my original child, my original inner child reality was very much so studying, right? Prescription pills, pharmaceuticals, what's going to work. And it was a part of my rehabilitation of consciousness was walking through the mental health field. Now, I'm not ostracizing or talking down to behavioral health at all right now. It saved my life. But it's something that created the availability to not be able to get to where I want to go. It was a disruption in my own consciousness from victim programming, from crucifixion, but also too is that my light body and my grids would shut down, which means that I didn't have um, the spiritual adeptness or the energetic adeptness to get to the next page. Fear would override. Things would enter and start looshing off of me. I had difficult times being able to make money. And all of this is like, yeah, you created all this, Corey, but I'm talking about spiritual imprinting. That was a part of a karmic experience that made it harder to like keep my business afloat, to trust people, um, to build stable connections in my journey, and would make me repeat lessons through energetic systems that didn't honor my light body, didn't honor my light quotient, didn't honor my journey. So this first one is that what was being shown to me last night was Nazareth. And if we break down that word, we're going to go into the spells because there's a lot of this ancient magic that says, let's break down this word, Nazareth. So here's what's being shown to me is it's split into two. So when we take that word Nazareth, right, and we break it down, Jesus of Nazareth, we have the Nazareth. What is Natsa? NASA? And wrath? What's the wrath of NASA or the wrath of Natsa, the wrath of Nazi? It's a fallen king. It's a fallen king, so it's a corrupted system. And what's tough here is like what's here's what's beautiful. The Antifa movement, without getting political, is beautiful because we're now looking at anti-fascism is actually going right into where we're dissolving the false king tyranny program. So like kudos to the collective, getting false king tyranny out of the way and standing up for what the rite of passage is to ignite, the solar king and what it is to be humble, heart-centered, loved, right? So we're playing out that kind of like that program collectively. Okay. But this NASA wrath, this Nazi wrath, is also a part of what this like original terror is here on planet Earth. And wrath being a signal of like revenge, of destruction, of chaos, of like back to like the original Leviathan, right? This sense that justice is found through Nagasaki dropping the nuclear bomb. Justice is found through war, right? Like, and when we look at what creates, our own justice system and balance is what brings fairness and forgiveness to this experience. And in fact, justice itself is a ping pong match, that it can be a forever game as long as we keep the dualism alive. And that dualism, that ignorance and that arrogance is in this good and evil and the construct of dualism that keeps us believing that there is a right and wrong in our journey, which builds morality, it builds law. And a part of that builds tendencies on how we stay contained or we stay bounded to our own experience. And this is where we're really starting to get into the ugly details of where we really do need to free and liberate ourselves. Now, here's the thing about these implanted timelines. These implanted timelines through some of the starseed races are the things that, as we are rehabilitating, also block our ability to hold our light quotient, to have our spiritual abilities, to have our spiritual powers, to have our self-empowerment, to have our willpower, to have our faith, to have our trust, to have our truth, so we can walk in our sovereignty. And I know some people might have a difficult time. I've had to break down the sovereignty thing too, right? But a part of this is that there are still experiences that we're choosing to release and free ourselves from, so we can actually have a sense of sanity. A part of us walking with these, these fire letters and these light codes, right, as a star seed, is about making sense of the reality. Now, what does making sense mean? In our five senses, it's about harmonic truth, creating senses where we feel comfortable in our own senses. Now, I know that some of this might come through very ego, right? I have groups and collectives of people who'd be like, does this really matter? Is it affecting your brain? It affects our nervous system. It affects our light. It affects our experience. And it affects our ability to walk in integrity and walk in power, especially when we are still working through, right, some of these control systems and control towers that continue to create very massive experiences that when they collapse hurt, right? So I'm aware of corrupted timelines and when they start to show up, and how hard can life be on our journey of fulfillment as a starseed with purpose when these things start to like interact with our lives again or affect our own dream state. And sometimes these things are found in blind spots in our journey, whether it's our energetic field, our auric field, our subtle bodies, our own light body. And even someone who's like, I'm a crystal kid, right? Is that these seeds, these implants have also dropped in through a lot of the activations through the crystals, right? And it's sad because it's like, here's this moment of being a crystal kid, loving jewelry, loving doing what he's doing, and can't afford the help to get these implants cleared. Um, has spent thousands of dollars to get this stuff cleared. And I continue to not discuss it because I don't want to bring fear to the public, but I think it's important because these are the same things that actually don't allow us to fully awaken and ascend in this lifetime. A part of these things have affected our financial industry, right? So we've had interference in our own banking systems, interference in our own economy. We've had interference of star seeds being able to get our businesses up and running, right? And someone who has spent a total of on this exact experience that I've been going through, I have spent a total of $5,700 to try to get this stuff cleared, and it's not cleared yet. Why? Well, now it's time to discuss it. That's why. So, I know that this can come across a lot of the blame game in believing that there's an external force outside of us, but these are things that when it comes to our energetic pathways and when it comes to locating like our fires, locating our ascension, wondering why we run through so many inversions, these are things that are also playing out in the collective field. And when I talk about the collective field, I'm talking about what it's like to want to hold a higher mind, a Buddha mind, a Devic mind in our own awareness avatar mind, right? Being able to hold logos, being able to hold all this and being able to do what we want to do. And at some level, it's suppressed, it's governed by a higher authority. We start to go through gaslighting. This is where we start to encounter a lot of like kind of like the narcissism stuff, and then what feels like can be a game in our reality. And what happens here is these disruptions and obfuscations start bringing in things like, shadow councils, right, that are showing up and kind of echoing and yelling at our mind. How does that show up? It can show up as schizophrenia. This is the stuff that can show up in mental dis-ease, mental disorder. It's the things that when you start to try to talk to someone who might be a very rational, sound mind person, or someone who has chosen a mind of law that understands these things, we can start labeling and diagnosing it. And what's sad here is we're looking at suppression and oppression of beautiful light beings who are here to do some wonderful things and are scared to get their life off the ground because they've chosen a life of this kind of obfuscation horcrux because of these timelines. There have been multiple Atlantean timelines where this implanting and seeding has occurred. And a part of this is clearing what those original seeds and imprints and implants are so we can actually get the blueprint cleared. We can get the archive cleared and we can get to where we need to go. And I speak to that because of Tartaria, right? And a part of what really is fascinating that I've been seeing lately about the Tartarian, because this is another implant trigger that when Tartaria starts to come through, this is when psychosis would occur for myself, is because it's like the body and the mind is trying to remember something. And as it remembers it, it goes back, right, into a repression. It goes back to psychosis, this belief of schizophrenia. No one's going to help me. No one's going to help me. Psychic attacks, like it just brings in so much. And a part of Tartaria is like that comes through for myself has been clean energy. clean foods, gardening, vegetables. Like when I see it, I'm seeing like what comes through for myself when I think of Tartaria, especially most recently, is like the availability to have fresh and healthy and clean food. Now we're also looking at, by the way, this is why suppression would occur, is because it would be a disaster to a lot of the big banking solutions and big pharma and big farms, big food initiatives, because there's so much money invested in it. And what's really tough here is like you can go into the like I go to the supermarket, right? Go to the supermarket and I'm looking for clean foods, even with my own family. Okay, let's go activate clean foods. And I recognize like I'm the alchemist of my own creation. I can transmute anything that comes into my body. I'm very well aware of what that power center is. But what happens here is that if you walk into the grocery store, you can see how we are very limited in certain grocery stores and grocery chains. We are limited in what we can purchase, which means that there's still a control in the food industry. There's a control over what we're allowed to eat. There's a control over the chemicals in the foods. And this is why a lot of people choose to go the gardening route. They choose to go the off-grid route. And this is where a lot of the hermits start to find their tribe and find their people. And kudos to you if you can do that. It's been harder to get out of some of these systemic traumas, to find a sense of footing and to feel like we have enough money to be able to get our life done, and to meet the right people and right tribe, that know what this experience is. And in some of us, I know myself, I don't want to um, I don't want to bash, right, my family or bash those that don't understand, but this is what happens when we're constantly trying to get to a better place in our journey. Not just ego. I'm talking about in a day-to-day life path, and we can't because of some of these implants. This one in particular, and this Project Bluebeam thing is this belief that a alien civilization is coming through to wipe away dogmas and religions. And we ran into a very similar thing in World War II, right? Where Nazi Germany, right? Hitler did the same thing, the burning of books. And so it's really tough because when we have a war over the library, we have a war over the archive, right? Which is so much. I mean, if we look at how much money has been invested in a lot of spiritual books, right? Like let's look at Hay House Publishing, let's look at all of the big publishers, okay? And then bigger than this is the amount of money invested in the Vatican and in the libraries and the books up there, right? And how much money is invested in the church. We can understand where we see kind of like a corruption of these libraries and existences and experiences that can create, quote unquote, they would call it the conspiracy theory, right? But these are also things that we have propagated as a civilization for so many years that we're watching ourselves unweave collective spells and the belief systems, right? This whole thing of Jesus. I just did a video earlier, right? And it was like, this is what I wanted to talk about. It's like, let's not talk about that because it's fear driven. I was like, I get it. Yeah, let's not propagate fear. Let's go heart centered. Let's go loving, right? And then I went to go take a shower and Yeshua showed up. And Yeshua showed up all white. And he was like, talk about it. And Yeshua doesn't show up that regularly. So when Yeshua shows up, when Christ consciousness shows up, I know I'm meant to discuss this, right? So, and it was because unfortunately things have occurred, wars, distractions, destruction, corruption, right? In which those timelines were implanted in the grids, it was implanted in our own life paths. And a lot of us have been walking around, right? Not able to see outside of the veils, right? We're either walking in the black mirror, we're walking under, heavy levels of corruption, and we're just trying to get to the best place. So, for myself, wanting to be an energy healer, that's all I want to do. I just want to get to a place in my journey where I can be an energy healer, where I'm doing this full time, where I can self-love, where I can help others, I can help other people, right? And we can make enough money to have fun and do what we're doing. But at some level, these corrupted timelines from distortions in Atlantis that we're here to rehabilitate, the fallen Tartaria, all of these like fallen experiences. There's so much information and misinformation that it can get very convoluted, and it can distract us from a very heart-centered experience. Even last night I was going to sleep, and the Syrian. I've had Arcturian simulations show up and do the same thing, which is a part of a holodeck in which I'm not going to get into it, but I've had to deal with fallen Arcturian and fallen Syrian experiences from this, from some of these wars. And I know, right now, there's a lot with Lyra showing up right now that's helping to clear these passageways so we can get it clear from our own starseed races, get it cleared from our blueprints, and get it all taken care of, right? The tough thing here is that when these switches get flipped and these lights turn on, is that we either go into an inverted matrix, which means our flow point of our light body cannot stand up. It doesn't fuel source. It goes up into an inverted frequency, which can bring in a lot of fear, which is all things that we have to clear, or it doesn't have a proper support mechanism. Now, when we hit an inversion because we're meant to clear the density belonging to that. But what's tough is that when it comes to the wars with time and the wars with consciousness and the psychospiritual conditioning, the spiritual attacks, the spiritual hierarchy, the spiritual ego, and channelers, right, is that this exact experience can take us away from Christ consciousness, right? And what's tough here is it can take us out of heart, it can take us out of love, it can take us out of our light body, and then we're back in the game of the victimizer, back in the game of the martyr, back in the game of the crucifixion, back in the belief systems of these stories that are basically continuing echoes of tragedy over and over and over again. And from that tragedy, this is what implies a lot of the blame game, right? Oh, it was fucking this guy, it was that guy, it was the white man, it was the native, it was the African American, it was fucking Hitler, it was cool. But if we're blaming or we're shaming and we're guilting, we're keeping a fear of opposites on planet Earth, right? And that opposites, that opposition, that divide and conquer is still a part of the ignorance that is built on the foundation of a lot of the original secret orders, right? Like the Masons, the checkerboard, right? The black and white, the good and the evil. Now, the teaching of dualism is knowing what we learn through contrast, but it's in this non-dualism, right, that we find oneness. What's tough here is that these implanted experiences, these implanted grids, these implanted holodecks and holograms is what can create confusion in our journey. And yet we're still propagating them through media, we're propagating them through social media. Some of these things are entering our dream time. Some of these things are a part of that. We don't have a solid stream of light and we're trying to clear these things out, or these are things that awaken through our templating process as well, especially if we're here to rehabilitate that, right? And it can be tough as a fallen Atlantean who's here to do the right thing to get this clear, to not be able to clear the karma properly, right? Or to clear the contract properly, or to clear the entities, agreements, beliefs, spells, everything within that. So I too can walk as an ancient magician and see it all as one spell. But I cannot deny the fact of what happens when, at some level, I keep running into spiritual sickness because I don't go to the church. Or I run into spiritual sickness because I'm not allowed to have a daily devotion in which I can hear my soul, I can hear my light body, or I can interact with my angels or with my guides. And why is it that at one moment it's all here and then in the next moment it's gone? And why is it that, especially if you're a contactee, right? And you have a light ship show up, that all of a sudden you forget everything or you remember everything, or you have timeline experiences where you don't have free will choice. Like, why is that occurring? Not because of fear, but let's become aware of the spiritual game and the spiritual program that can exist with these experiences and what we open up ourselves to. And if you have a higher galactic aspect of you that's trying to get you to reconnect to your origin, to source, and to your own personal story, let's be aware of what these stories are and what create more fear and more illusion or more lies for ourselves to continue to believe. So, it's difficult because I too don't want to be a part of any of this spiritual ego, spiritual hierarchy, or spiritual crap any longer. I just want to get to a place where my light body makes sense, where my energy body makes sense, where my connections make sense, and I can walk and stay afloat. I mean, I think it's fair to state from the perspective and observation over what my mom and dad have had to see is my mom and dad have had to see me numerous times on both sides of the fence, systemic and non-systemically, go through big hurts, abuse, suicidal ideation because of these kinds of implants. And I don't think it's fair to us. It's fair to our gifts. It's fair to our soul, fair to our loved ones, and fair to our children that these things are still occurring here on planet Earth, and it would be nice to see the next generation of star kids not have to deal with what some of us had to deal with through some of the indigo contracts, some of the misuse of energy stuff, some of the control beacons and directional beacons that create control grids here on planet Earth, or some of these, these echoes, these imprints in fallen Anunnaki timelines are as well, right? And it's tough because here we have kids that just want to show up and do the soul work. They get their mission. They get their, it's so awakening. The first awakening is so fucking innocent. When the light turns on and you just want to believe in more and you want to go follow that dream, right? And then you get to that point where all this stuff can start to come through if this has happened for you. And it gets in the way, right? Like I've talked to some original Rishi people and soul people who are a little bit more of the Bhagavad Gita, and they're doing this work. And man, it's like the galactic lineages and the star lineages and the star tribes took on way too many complications. But some of us were contracted because of those wars to get those things cleared, right? And it's sickening to live these details because it really can take us away from having a good spiritual experience, and it can take us on so many weird oppositions and journeys that it doesn't give us the opportunity to really have love in our journey, or to share love, or to live in fear, or to live in hierarchy, or to live in this belief system. Some people would say the details aren't important because it's all ego, but some of these details matter because when we start calling it like we see it, we can take action in new ways. And we can be okay saying, you know what? I'm done. I do not consent to you guys implanting me. I do not consent to astral projections, right? Showing up and continuing to implant me through the lower fourth dimensional astrals. I do not consent, right, for obfuscation and confusion. I do not consent to playing these timelines anymore. And I don't consent to some higher being, right? Some higher God world, especially a higher AI God world, to come through and to continue to turn me into some fucking social media experiment, plain and simple, right? The basis of this is this. This channel is built on love. It is not built on some weird supercomputer, right? Infecting my brain. So I look more like the kid with the tinfoil hat that needs to be taking some weird fucking, chemical to feel balance in his journey, right? My hormones, right, can stay balanced without your chemical superimposition, right? My endocrine system, right, my hypothalamus, my thyroid, all of it can stay healthy and loving and very, very, very far away, right, from the scientific lab experiment that has happened for many of us because we just didn't know, right? I can reclaim, right, my sovereignty. I can reclaim my power, and I can reclaim my innocence, and I can reclaim the fact that I can talk about this and not believe that the men in black are going to show up and fucking stick something over my head and drive me away, or that I'm going to get killed because I'm sharing what I'm sharing. Like I can live as light and love myself and make a good living and make a good earning and have a house and pay my taxes and do all those things and move through it. And I know some of us might not agree taxes, but like, I can be a law abiding citizen, right? And do what I came here to do and show up, and no one's going to get harmed as a result of that. And yet, there's been a lot of harmful experiences that have really harmed our soul. It's harmed our light body. It's harmed our fire. It's harmed a lot of things, and it hasn't given us the opportunity to feel like we can really thrive. It's been quite punishing in the last couple of years trying to break through all these implants. And so these trigger moments aren't meant to be things that create more fear. They're meant to be things that we heal, whether you remember or not, whether you were a part of these experiences or not, like you can step into the solution. And for those of us that are trying to rehabilitate all these different fucking timelines, like I really don't think life is a movie and life is a game. I understand what we're talking about with the animator processes and really believing that, in those like reanimator forces, but I really don't believe that life is genuinely a movie or an animation, right? Like, um, my third eye is not the Disney Channel, right? Like, get what I mean, Jelly Bean? And a part of this is that, behind the lenses is thinking that life is some movie, right? Like we're the theater, we're in the theater watching the show. And I get what it's like to live in that kind of dream state. But the other thing too is am I going to continue to apply a theory and a theology to something that was built through the entertainment industry, or I'm going to step back into my organic source here? Because I know that we say, life is but a dream, and all of these things. It's like, is that an organic thought, or is that another seed that was planted here on planet Earth through movie? And I still love movies. I love watching Disney Channel. I love being able to just like relax and be able to listen to music and things, right? But I also have to become aware that some of my ideology, theology, and some of the spiritual sickness that's occurring here on planet Earth is that we've taken themes and concepts that were applied from weird experiences that aren't giving us organic truth. Right? And it's interesting. I know fear, right? False evidence appearing real, but we've also we leaned into some really strange mastery levels of experiences that have gifted us some hard lessons, right? And I feel like it's time for us to be able to earn the rewards back of being able to have our fire letters safely connected, our light body safely connected, our ability to heal safely connected, right? Because if you, through your free will choice, want to step away from, let's say, the system of mental health, and you want to take care of yourself and to be able to forward a way of being a healer on planet Earth, you should be able to. And also, too, is that my belief is that if we're here rehabilitating the planet and we're not going to do those dark and nasty things to one another any longer, then where are the rehabilitative programs that gives us an opportunity to be able to receive support where some of us can't afford it right now? Like I can't afford a $500 session to get these implants removed. Right? I've spent numerous amounts I've spent thousands on sessions. I've spent thousands on money improving myself, thousands of dollars on crystals and everything. And it's like, why aren't these implants clearing? Right? Why aren't these timelines clearing? What's going on? Well, it's not about them. It's about myself. And it's about that we can't stay quiet about these things any longer, right? Is that whatever has whatever is sitting our grids, sitting in our area, or whatever collective egregores and collective spells we keep weaving and unweaving from the reality, it's time that this shit is done with. And a part of that is really stepping into our own Christic command, right? Of being able to command the energy to clear, command the grids to clear, command the solutions to show up, right? Command divinity to return, command sovereignty over our own energetic centers, right? The ability to have our own crown back, our own crown chakra, right? The ability to stay connected to source, the ability to know that if we tune into the heart and we call in source, source shows up. The ability to know that our soul star chakra will stay open, right? And that we're not going to get cords or attachments or weird things that keep collapsing our divinity, especially our higher stellar gateway, right? Being able to make sure that our ascension column is fully intact, that we don't have to walk around dealing with, the continuing psychic attack, the attachments, the intermediaries, or, bigger bosses of the dark lord underworld are coming out to get us, right? It's just, it's tough. And there are many times where I feel like I'm just stuck in a galactic virtual reality game, trying to get the body to wake up off of this fucking weird UFO, right? Trying to get out of this prison sentence or whatever this is to remember my freedom. But the thing is that there's so much money in fear. There has been so much money wrapped in fear, so much money wrapped in the solution for fear, especially when it comes to chemicals, pharmaceuticals, pills, things like this, that it's really tough now because it's like, what's life when that entire world is melted? And this is where the star seeds and the guides show up. This is where the gurus show up. This is where our light beings show up. This is where our Christed I am presence shows up. And this is where we start actually providing some cool solutions. And so, in a sense, it's like, hey, can we get the BS out of the way and end the war and end the fight and end the disagreement so our light body can return? So we can feel like we can feel safe in our plasmas. We can feel safe in our mind. We can feel safe in our solutions. We can feel safe in our business. We can feel safe in our journey. So you don't continually feel like you're being taken advantage of. Right? The reestablishment and the connection to an internal sense of victory, which means that the worst is over with. That's all it is. And when I first activated victory consciousness, it's where we were done playing in the victim and the victimizer. And a part of that is being a survivor, right? And that survivor might mean we don't have our biggest smiles, right? That survivor might mean we might not be showing in our most beautiful, glorious, effervescent light. Sometimes our survivor is still a little ticked off or a little upset or scared to share its truth or doesn't know how to ask for help or might not have the resources. But if you've gone through any of these events in history and you've had to clear them, you can reclaim your survivor at any point in time, and you don't have to stay there. You too can evolve back into thriving. But that survivor saying, you know what? Yeah, I made it through a difficult timeline. Yeah, I have felt taken advantage of. Yeah, I've gone through a lot with the archonic deception strategy. Yeah, I've gone through a lot with the galactic wars. Yeah, I've gone through a lot with these, implanting systems. Yeah, I've gone through a lot. I've spent a lot of money. I've gone through the spiritual hierarchy, the spiritual ego, the churches, the dogmas, the religions, whatever. Right. But you too, can have your belief system in creating a better world and a peaceful existence in which that new earth timeline can show up. And it doesn't have to be overridden by a higher collective truth or egregore that's just a spell from a dictator, right? Like we don't have to continue to believe the lies. We too can shut off the tube and go for a walk and listen to Mother Earth for a little bit. But I'll tell you what, for the people that are still trying to clear these implants, it can be hard to listen to Mother Earth, and it can be a lot easier to get into the distraction because it can hurt being in these places, right? And this is where, therapeutic groups opening up would be nice, right? Collective places where we can talk about this and cry it out with one another without trauma bonding or attaching to the scenario where we can cleanse it. Or maybe moments where we can actually go get some assistance that doesn't cost us thousands of dollars or millions of dollars to get there. Or perhaps we can actually go get an actual real energy healing where the healing actually occurs and we don't keep looping trauma from so many different fucking energy schools that it never gets cleared. I've looped so many of these things and spent so much money. It's enough to buy a car. It's enough to have a car to be able to get to a good place and to meet some good people, right? And still, it's like, when is the healing done? So I think here is, as this is a rant and as a ramble, is also an opportunity to state that perhaps we need to know a little bit more about these things within ourselves and our own consciousness so we can clear it and we can start steering the ship towards a better journey, towards an ascension pathway where we don't horcrux or limit our origin. Right? Love you guys. Stay safe, stay sane, stay happy. It is a beautiful world out there. Some of us have just been through some really nasty scenarios that we're ready to clear.